Hello and welcome back to the Bober Academy Football Podcast as we continue our Saturday morning recovery series with Dr. Nolan Clausen and Midwest Movement. I'm your host, Chris Bober, 8-year NFL veteran, 4 years with the Giants, 4 years with the Chiefs. I'm also the founder of the Bober Academy, where our mission is to train and develop superior linemen to dominate on the gridiron. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone out there, our handle is at Bober Academy on all the social media. And if you could comment, retweet, like, share, all the things that they do out there. If you're watching this on YouTube, right down there is the subscribe button. If you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel, that'd be very, very helpful. And also, if you're listening to this in a podcast app, be sure to subscribe to that. We just love to share anything and everything about football and try to make better linemen out there and better for the sport of football overall. Like I said, we're joined by Dr. Nolan Clausen of Midwest Movement in Elkhorn. MidwestMovementElkhorn.com is how you find them. They're located in Elkhorn, right next to Rick's Meats over there on 204th Street. Dr.
Yep.
Nolan, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Dr. Nolan's been such a wealth of knowledge for us, just in how our bodies work. And I know, the knowledge he shared with me has changed how I coach offensive linemen, especially in the training portion or how fundamentals work. And what we're going to talk about today is kind of foot, ankle, and lower limb injuries. And, there's a prevalent one that came out this week. Aaron Rodgers popped his Achilles in the fourth play of the season. And we also see so many ankle injuries that come up. It's probably, I would argue to say, it's the most prevalent injury in high school sports, right?
Yeah. I would say it's right up there.
What we're going to talk to Dr. Nolan about today is maybe start off with some prevention of why they happen. And, as an offensive line coach and instructor, we start with the feet. Right. Our feet are so paramount to controlling, our movements. We generate all of our power through the ground by having our whole foot on the ground. So if you haven't checked out our building alignment series, we've gone extensively into, feet and ankles and lower body. But Dr. Nolan, tell me, you see a lot of ankle injuries out there, and I feel like it's kind of this part of the season when they start to show up. You and I talked about our guys doing their drills in their socks and just not relying on the support that you get from ankle tape and from these, high top football cleats that really box in your feet. But tell me about why these are starting to pop up now and some of the things that maybe we could have done to prevent them.
Yeah. So we could go far stretch of why these things are going on, or we could go mediocre, but I want to go that far stretch right away. Basically, so this is a foot. It's a skeleton of a foot. And as you can see in here, there's a bunch of little bones, right? There's all those little bones are also opportunities of joint movement in the foot, right? So if this was just one solid bone, there would be not a whole lot of movement, right? So we're uniquely designed because we have all these joints so we can allow movement, right? But what do we do almost all the time? We put our feet in a shoe and we lock up those joints right away. What do we do with ankle tape? What do we do with all those things, right? What have we been doing the last 2 months? We used to be at home, kind of lounging on the couch, not wearing shoes, or going and working out and doing things like that. But now we're going to school, we're wearing tennis shoes all day long, or other shoes that are constricting those feet. Then we put football cleats on, we go out and practice, we constrict, we tape, we do all these things, and we constrict all the movements in that foot so that we don't have the ability to use what was uniquely designed, right?
And over time, I think about this now as a coach in a program. Guys are wearing these shoes in practice and they're getting their ankles taped. And then even after practice, they go and lift and they still have their ankles taped and they do their exercises. And, all off season, no one tapes their ankles in the off season. No one tapes their ankles in conditioning drills or stuff like that. So all of the strength and dexterity and mobility that we built up by training without high tops and ankle tape on, within a month or two of not using those muscles, we're starting to see those things kind of fade away and become more vulnerable to injuries, right?
Correct. And why do we tape our ankles? Because we don't want to be vulnerable to injuries,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of counterintuitive a little bit, right? Now, obviously, so when I was in college, we had a basketball coach that made us tape our ankles or wear ankle braces every single day for practice, right? I was hugely resistant on it for this fact because I knew I had a bunch of ankle injuries. But what he did is he made sure that every single person did an ankle protocol before and after practice, right? So if you're doing those ankle protocols, yeah, go ahead, tape your ankles, wear your ankle braces, right? But if you're not doing those, then we need to have some serious talks about maybe ditching the ankle braces, the ankle tape. And you're going to save your athletic trainer a lot of time if you're not going in there every single day. And maybe doing some of that prehab, rehab, and post-hab on your own before and after, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna give a little pointer right here. I'm right here because but as I go and edit this video, I'm gonna put a link into, the training that we did back. Shoot, it was all the way back in the beginning of this year. But I'll include a link with this video
Yeah,
of some of those exercises. I know you might show us some of those today. But just in general, like as a general rule, so no matter what happens, you have to keep those muscles in your foot and your ankle and your lower leg moving. And you think about it, it's probably the one joint that football players will quote unquote protect all the
yeah,
time. So even if you want to do that, you have to have some sort of protocol to continue to build and keep that strength and mobility in your ankles, right?
right. Yeah. And so my most simple protocol, and I'm going to show it at the end. I use it for plantar fasciitis,
Mhm.
people that have plantar fasciitis. And I believe it's a really good protocol for building the strength of our foot, which in turns builds the strength of our ankle and our calf, right? So I'm not going to go out there on a limb and say that Aaron Rodgers wasn't doing some of these things. We're going to kind of shift. It was well known that he had a calf strain going into that game, right? And he pops the Achilles. You can see it on film. If you slow it down, you can see the Achilles pop, right? Um, but however, like he is another prime example. Like he's been in training all season, been wearing shoes more and more. We kind of know that he's a little off the spectrum and like maybe more into the hippie thing. So like I would imagine that he's probably not wearing shoes often and things like that. But the more and more he started wearing shoes for training camp, like basically those foot muscles started getting weaker and the calf muscles had to do more work to actually control the foot, right? So we knew he had a calf strain. And I would hope that his trainers were starting to load the feet muscles because he had the calf strain, right? And then his foot gets caught in the turf, right? His ability to move that foot is nowhere, and so the calf pops, right?
That's
So
kind of like a domino effect, right? Where
right,
at some point that stress has got to go somewhere,
right.
and it just ended up going to his Achilles in this instance.
And now maybe he did everything perfect, and we're never going to know that because we're not Aaron Rodgers, and so we don't know if he did everything perfect. We don't know if the trainers did everything perfect or not. But the point is like we can avoid injuries like that to the calf, the ankle, the Achilles, and things like that by building really strong feet, and we can reduce our risk quite a bit. Now, with ankles, we know that that is a very prominent injury. There is an old saying that's still floating around, and it drives me nuts. This guy many years ago created the acronym RICE: rest, ice, compress, elevate. Right?
And
Pretty
that's
much
something that I mean, how long has that been around? Like decades. And
40 plus years, I think. I
and it
think it
seems
was.
I
Yeah.
know you're going to tell us this in a second, but it's one of those kind of things that took off in popularity because it sounded good. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, put some ice, put some rest in that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this kind of like you're jumping into it and why maybe for guys that are football players and guys and anyone out there watching or listening to this, if you turn your ankle or something like this, or in this applies to a lot of injuries, but just kind of dispel the myth of this RICE method.
So the guy that created the rice method, he has later now come out multiple times and aggressively saying that was dumb of me. That is nowhere near what we need to be doing with these injuries, right? So we're talking about ligament, muscle, and tendon injuries, right? We're not talking about bone breaks. Bone breaks, rice is a good option for that, right? But by and large, we have tendon, ligament, and muscle things that are happening for us, right? So what we want to do is we need to start moving that joint or that ligament, that tendon, that muscle right away. We need movement. And why we need movement is movement gets blood flowing. It gets swelling to keep circulating, right? When we immobilize, we elevate, we actually just like get all this stagnant swelling. When things blow up and they're swelling, there's a good reason that it's swelling, right? So that comes up our next point. We want inflammation. So people were icing. Icing reduces inflammation, right? We want inflammation. Inflammation is bringing all these healing properties to those tissues that have been injured, right? So we want to make sure that the inflammation is there. But we also don't want it to be stagnant. So the movement is going to create circulation. We want that good stuff to be delivered to those tissues, and we want it to come back out so that it can bring more good tissue over and over again, right? And if we immobilize or we compress it, one, we don't let the swelling get in there. If we don't move it, it just gets stagnant. It just sits in there. And so we're not recirculating those good healing properties.
Yeah, it's amazing how our bodies work, right? You know, our circulatory system is meant to like deliver good blood in there and then take away some of that injured blood, and it'll deal with it in the body like it does. But I have a question for you. I mean, I hear you saying that. So are you saying that like you don't have to ice when you have an injury like that? Or is it something to where if you do ice, you got to make sure you maybe use a contrast and get moving afterwards? I mean, what are your feelings on like using ice? Because it's just something that every trainer out there is doing.
Yeah. I'm going to make some trainers mad, but I say ditch the ice. It's kind of a waste of time. Like if you have to choose 20 minutes of icing versus 5 minutes of doing this movement, I'm picking 5 minutes of doing this movement forever, right? Even if you're doing the contrast, which I think is the right way to do ice and heat if you're going to do it, because it gets that circulation of it going. But how often are kids going to be able to sit 20 minutes ice, 10 minutes heat, 20 minutes ice, enough to circulate it and like actually get it moving? We just don't have the attention span to actually do what is necessary for those two modalities to even work the right way, right? So ice, why do we use ice in inflammation, right? It constricts the vessels, it closes down. But we just got done talking about how we want that flow of blood, right? If we're constricting down, we're just slowing down the healing process.
Yeah, I guess maybe the ice numbs the area so it doesn't hurt as much. Maybe that's a psychological effect, and that why they use it, because it kind of takes the pain out of it and makes you feel better a little bit, I guess.
So there is a good research study out there that is very well performed, but it takes ice and heat and it tries to go in and see if there's any physiological, meaning like any science benefits. And the only science benefits that they could come up with are that placebo effect. What you felt. Did it feel good? Yeah, it felt great. Heat felt great. Okay, keep heating. If ice felt great, keep icing. So basically, it is up to the person, and it is a lot of psychological, right? But I'm a sciencey guy, obviously, but I don't want to waste the time with some of those things. And so we want to be able to start doing movement, inflammatory ways. So like in our office, we do a lot of needling, we do a lot of scraping to try to increase inflammation, right? Inflammation is good, right? So let's get more, right? Let's try to get it more. Let's speed up that process. Let's help the body do what it needs to. Then, so we like to use instead of rice, we like to use mild It's not as sexy, but it's movement, inflame, load. So, and then it's ditch the braces, ditch the immobilization, ditch the crutches, ditch all those things that the boots. But we go back to load. We need to start loading tissue. Tissue, if you can think about it, like tissue has all these fibers that run together, right? And when it gets injured, it's like it breaks open like this. But when it breaks open, it basically brings all those healing properties, right? But we got to teach those healing properties what they need to do, because it starts to get into this just jumbled mess, right?
Mhm.
Now, when we get that jumbled mess and we try to pull it apart, right? It kind of stiff, it hurts, there's nodules, like all those things. But if we start pulling or loading those tissues appropriately, we start getting them to get in the right direction of fibers. We get good, even pull. But if we do all the movement and we don't load it, we just get this jumbled mess and we get a ton of scar tissue in that area. So we start loading people right away.
Now, real quick, I have one more question before you show us a couple of these quick little exercises that we should be doing. When someone has an ankle sprain and in doing that, it's always been like, okay, you have a sprain, we're going to ice it, we're going to stabilize it, and then we're going to tape the heck out of it and put you back out to practice or to play. Is it your contention to say that, if you start loading and stuff, the inflammation and the swelling will start working its way out of there naturally through the body? Then, do you think that they should wait to go and participate again until they can go play without tape? Or is it still good to kind of say, okay, you've had a tender ankle, go tape it up and go and play when you get back?
So that's very dependent, right? We typically say that you need 48 hours of that inflammation process, right? After about 72 hours, we really want that inflammation to be out of there. But we're going to keep continuing inflaming it a little bit in our office, but try to push that inflammation out after we get the healing properties in there. So what you're asking is, like, how soon do we get these people back? I'm a huge advocate. Like, yeah, we can give it like a day of rest ish, but we're still doing all these exercises. It's just really low load compared to what they normally were doing. Then, based on the athlete, we will start testing it. We'll start having them do hops and things, like for an ankle injury. If they're able to do those hops and side to side things, yeah, let's tape it up. Let's immobilize it so that we're not going to re-aggravate that ligament. That's the time that you do tape and do brace. But you have to make sure that you started getting all the other structures around it to get on board with taking over some of that load management of that injured tissue.
And then the goal would be to get it to where it's strong enough and healed enough to where you don't have to wear the brace or the thing again. So that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's probably a faster road to recovery than maybe some of the trainers that are just, taping it and say, okay, you're not really fixing it. You're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it to try to get through competition. At some point, your body's going to have to heal.
Yeah. And it comes out of a safety standpoint. Like, I don't fault the trainers. They're doing what they want to, or what their number one objective is keep the athlete safe, right? I want to keep the athlete safe, but I also want them to succeed. And so do the trainers, but like, I'm just going to be a little bit more aggressive because that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. Now, when it comes to, like getting them back onto the field, we want to slowly transition out of those braces and that taping. And that comes with time.
And I think as athletes, they just, especially with high school athletes, they're young, they're just kind of, not wise to the world. They think, okay, I'm back to practice. I don't have to finish up. I'm ready to go. My ankle's taped up. I can play. But really, once you get back to competition and start doing your sport, you still have a ways to go. Your goal isn't to get back into the sport. It's to get back into the sport, be completely healed up. So you got to follow that through that protocol, and not, it isn't just throwing tape on and slugging through practice or games. It's trying to get all the way back is what you want to get to.
Yeah.
So I wanted to in the essence of time, you got a couple exercises you can show us. And
Yeah.
again, when we work with my lineman the first day of the clinic that we always come out to our camp, I've had you come out before, and I have them do their drills without their shoes on. So show us a couple of things that even if you're in competition now, right? We're a third to halfway through the season. Your ankles are starting to get a little weak because we might have neglected them a little bit, but show us a couple exercises that we can do to kind of get back on track and maybe prevent some ankle injuries and lower body injuries.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, but I don't have a good camera person here. It's myself. But I think everybody should just have one of these by their bedside, and it's a lacrosse ball,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And just especially, the aches and pains and things like that. But basically, the first thing, I like this as in the morning or before practice for our feet, right? So we're going to take that lacrosse ball and we're going to put it on the bottom of our foot and we're just going to roll it. You see there's no rhyme or reason, just rolling around. I'm going to find some spicy nuggets. I found one right there. I'm going to spend a little bit of time, dig in, and we're going to switch to the other side, okay? We're going to roll it around, and really we want to just activate those muscles, get them just woke up, right? It's like slapping you in the face in the morning. That's going to wake you up, or pouring water on you. We just want to get those muscles waking up. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do, and people might find this really gross, but we're going to hold hands with our feet. We're going to interlace our fingers in between our toes like that. And we're just going to move the foot around, trying to get all those little joints that we talked about to start moving. Okay.
And even with your toes and all those tons of bones down there, you just kind of getting blood flow in there, right? Letting the body do what it's supposed to do, which is to naturally heal and naturally regenerate, and kind of creating movement in there, which is all good for everything in that foot, right?
Yeah, this feels amazing. It's kind of stretching the toes out. I can just feel the bones in there. I'm a visual person, so I'm visualizing those bones just moving around in there. Okay, so now we got things mobilized, we got things woke up. Now we're going to start working on getting our foot dexterity. So if you can look really closely, I'm pushing my big toes into the ground, lifting the other four. Ooh, got a cramp. So we're doing some good work. Good. Now we push the other four, lift the big toe. Okay. Cramping up on me. So we'll just do this right foot. But we're just going back and forth. We're trying to get those little muscles in our foot to start waking up, to do some of the load, share the load, so that the calf and those ankle muscles and all those things don't have to do all the work. We want those little muscles to be active. When we put them in shoes, they often start just getting lazy and they don't work. So we want to make sure that we wake them up and we make them work a little. Okay. So that's the first thing, or the first little movement. The next one, this is kind of an odd one, but we're going to stand right here and we're just going to lean forward. And what we're trying to do is get our arches to start working. So I'm just leaning forward, trying to catch myself from falling flat on my face. Okay. And that leaning forward will just get those arch muscles to start kicking in, so that the calf muscles don't have to do all the work of getting into that range. Okay. Now, this is an optional one, but I think everybody should do it. Basically, toes or foot up on a chair, a bench, or something. We're just going to try to get our knee over our toes and just get that range of motion in the ankle. Good.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is that range of motion, because I think, for Achilles injuries and ankle injuries, when, your muscles get tight and you lose that range of motion, that, like you said, that load has to go somewhere. So then it goes to a ligament, or it goes to your Achilles, your calf. And so many of those injuries probably could be prevented if we just worked on our, the exercise you're doing, but specifically the range of motion ones.
Yep. And so when I do this, I'm asking patients, or I'm asking myself, do I feel that in my ankle joint, or am I feeling my calf and my Achilles stretch, right? When I do it on this one, I'm feeling my Achilles stretch, right? And what that means is that I might need to spend a little bit more time on getting these muscles loose, foam rolling, right? and then working these muscles with our foot dexterity. This is the one that kept cramping on me. We need to work those foot muscles to offload that Achilles. Now, when I do it on this side, I feel it in my ankle. I feel jamming in that front part of my ankle, right? So what that tells me is I need to spend a little bit more time mobilizing the foot. And
so not only doing this, it works. It kind of gives you a little bit of feedback of where you might be getting some tension. You might be getting, that stuff starts to add up over time, and that's where the injuries come from. I can tell you as a lineman, we always talk about playing with our feet on the ground, your whole foot on the ground. And the stronger your feet are in doing like these very small, imperceptible motions you got in there, all those little muscles become stronger. And then you have a greater contact with the ground. You can use your power more, you have more balance, and all those things, they add up over time. And if you don't do them, they go away quickly, I think.
Yep, agreed. So that little routine is something we give people all the time for plantar fasciitis issues. But I think in general, if people are struggling with ankles or calves or Achilles injuries, that is a really, really good start. And that is something that I would recommend. Like, might not be it's a non-negotiable for people to do before practice if you're dealing with those injuries before.
Yeah, and so everyone that's watching or listening to this is a great episode just to really talk about, something you should be doing every day, right? If your feet become weak, your ankles become weak, up the chain, that's got to that stress and that has to go somewhere. That load has to go somewhere. And I think you'll probably attest to this, is that yes, it might show up in an ankle injury or a calf injury, but then all of a sudden, if they become weak, you're going to put your knee out of position. That makes it susceptible. Your hips start getting out of position, then your back starts hurting. I mean, it's just a domino effect where the feet, obviously I know you love the core and the breathing part, but the feet for me are such a big deal to get those right. And then you give yourself a chance to be healthy and strong and mobile and be able to execute athletic moves if you can just take care of your feet.
Yeah. I do love the core and I do love it, but it's the easiest battle to go after, but the feet are definitely second on that list. So.
Nice. Well, Dr. Nolan, once again, you've amazed us with your knowledge and your practicality of very simple little things that can make you a better offensive lineman or a better athlete in general, or heck, just a healthier person walking around every day.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing everything you have. I'm going to include the link to your business if people want to learn more, or if they need maybe you to come in and show them how to do that. You're really, really good at getting athletes back on the field, especially as we're in the season. We're starting to come to districts and guys don't want to be missing time. So again, MidwestMovementElkhorn.com is where you find them. They're out by Rick's Meats in Elkhorn. And a reminder before we finish here, if you're watching this right down there, click to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Bober Academy as our handle on all the social media. Please join in with the fun. And Dr. Nolan, once again, thanks for joining us. And we appreciate that. And if they need anything from you, they'll come find you.
Yeah. Like I said, we're by Rick's Meats, so come get yourself a steak too.
There you go. A little protein, little Dr. Nolan time. So, all right, Dr. Nolan, we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you.